The evening air bit at Zora's skin as she pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. February in Chicago was no joke. The wind that rolled off Lake Michigan felt like it could cut right through you, especially when you didn't have a proper place to call home. At 18 years old, Zora Thomas had been living on the streets for nearly 6 months. Not by choice, never by choice, but because the system had simply run out of room for her. Aging out of foster care had felt like falling off a cliff with no safety net below. One day at a time, she whispered to herself, a mantra that had carried her through the hardest nights. Tonight promised to be another tough one as dark clouds gathered overhead, threatening rain. Zora quickened her pace toward the downtown bus station. It wasn't ideal, but the security guards usually let homeless folks stay inside until midnight when it rained. Better than nothing, she thought. The first drops began to fall as she rounded the corner of State Street. By the time she reached the station entrance, the drizzle had turned into a proper downpour. Water dripped from her curly black hair as she pushed through the revolving door, grateful for the rush of warm air that greeted her. The station wasn't busy this late, just a few travelers waiting for the last buses of the night, and a handful of others like her seeking temporary shelter. Zora scanned the room for an empty bench away from the others. She valued her privacy, even in public spaces. Her eyes landed on a bench in the far corner. Perfect. As she approached, she noticed something sitting on it, a handbag. Not just any handbag, but the kind she'd seen in the glossy magazines she sometimes flipped through at the public library. Real leather, designer label, probably worth more than she'd make in months if she ever found steady work. Zora looked around. No one was rushing to claim it. No one was even looking in that direction. She sat down beside the purse waiting. 5 minutes passed, 10. The last call for the 11:15 p.m. bus to Milwaukee came and went. Still no one approached. Someone's having a really bad night, Zora murmured, finally picking up the bag. It was heavier than she expected. The right thing to do was turn it into the station's lost and found. But Zora had learned the hard way that lost and found offices weren't always trustworthy. What if the staff just kept the valuable items for themselves? That happened more often than people realized. With a sigh, she unzipped the bag. If there was ID inside, maybe she could contact the owner directly. The contents made her breath catch.
A wallet fat with cash.
Several shiny credit cards. A smartphone that probably cost more than all her worldly possessions combined. Keys with a luxury car fob. A small notebook with a gold pen clipped to it. Zora carefully opened the wallet. Inside was at least $5,000 in crisp $100 bills. Her hands trembled slightly. That kind of money could change everything. Temporary housing, food for months, maybe even a chance to take some community college classes. Behind the cash was a driver's license. The photo showed a woman with sharp features and confident eyes. Eleanor Winters, the name read, with an address in the Gold Coast neighborhood, one of the wealthiest parts of the city. Something clicked in Zora's memory. She'd seen that face before in the business magazines she studied at the library. Eleanor Winters, CEO of Winters Global Investments, one of the few black female billionaires in America. Well, I'll be, Zora whispered. For a brief moment, just a heartbeat really, a thought crossed her mind. No one would know. The woman probably had insurance for this kind of thing. The cash alone would make such a difference in her life right now. But as quickly as the thought came, Zora pushed it away. That wasn't who she was. That wasn't who her grandmother had raised her to be before she passed. Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, her grandmother used to say. The memory of her voice was so clear, Zora could almost feel her presence in the bus station. Zora zipped the purse closed and placed it on her lap. Tomorrow morning, she would find a way to return it to its rightful owner. For tonight, she would guard it as if it were her own. The station began to empty as midnight approached. Zora knew the security guards would be making their rounds soon, asking anyone without a ticket to leave, rain or not. She needed a plan. Carefully, she removed the phone from the purse. It was locked, of course, but there might be a way to contact someone. She pressed the emergency call button, relieved when the screen changed. Instead of dialing 911, she tried something else. She'd read once that many phones allowed access to emergency contacts even when locked. She tapped through several options until she found what she was looking for. A list of ICE, in case of emergency contacts. The first name on the list was Robert Winters, husband. Zora hesitated. It was nearly midnight. Was this really an emergency? But then again, if someone had found her backpack with all her important documents, she'd want to know right away. She pressed the call button. It rang 4 times before a deep, groggy voice answered. "Hello? Eleanor?" No, sir," Zora said carefully. "My name is Zora Thomas. I found Mrs. Winter's purse at the downtown bus station. I wanted to let someone know it's safe." There was a pause, followed by the sound of movement as if the man was sitting up in bed. "You found Eleanor's purse? With everything in it?" "Yes, sir. Everything's here, wallet, phone, keys, everything. I wanted to make sure it got back to her." Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, a mix of relief and suspicion. Thank you. Eleanor's been turning the city upside down looking for it. She didn't even realize where she might have left it." Zora nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I can bring it to your home or meet you somewhere tomorrow." No. I don't want you to go to any trouble." "Where are you now?" The question made Zora uncomfortable. She wasn't about to tell a stranger she was homeless. "I'm at the downtown bus station. I was catching a late bus," she lied smoothly. "I see. Listen, would you be willing to bring it to Winter's Tower tomorrow morning? It's the tall building with the blue glass on Michigan Avenue. Eleanor will be there early, around 7. She has meetings all day. I can let her know you're coming." "Yes, I can do that," Zora said, though she wasn't sure how she'd be received at a fancy office building. "Ask for Eleanor at reception. They'll know to expect you," Robert said. "And thank you, this is really decent of you." After ending the call, Zora slipped the phone back into the purse. The security guard was making his way toward her section now, eyeing the remaining stragglers. "Closing time, folks," he called out. Zora stood up, clutching the purse close to her body. The rain had stopped, but the night was still cold. She'd have to find somewhere else to sleep, somewhere secure where she could keep the purse safe. She thought of the 24-hour diner 6 blocks away. The overnight waitress, Kelly, sometimes let her sit in a back booth and nurse a cup of coffee until morning if she wasn't causing trouble. Tonight she could spring for a proper meal with her last few dollars. It would be worth it to ensure the purse stayed safe. As Zora walked through the quiet downtown streets, she wondered what would happen tomorrow when she showed up at Winter's Tower. Would they even let her in? Would they believe the purse was really hers to return? Would they think she had taken something from it? The weight of the bag reminded her of the cash inside. $5,000, more money than she'd seen in one place since, well, ever. That kind of money represented possibilities she rarely allowed herself to dream about. Yet somehow, knowing she was doing the right thing felt better than any temporary comfort the money might have bought. Her grandmother would be proud. That thought warmed her more than any shelter could. The neon sign of the diner glowed in the distance, a beacon of hope for the night. Zora straightened her shoulders and picked up her pace. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. For tonight, she had a purpose and a promise to keep. As she pushed open the door to the diner, the bell jingled overhead. Kelly looked up from behind the counter and gave her a tired smile. "Rough night out there, huh?" the waitress asked, already reaching for the coffee pot. "Could be worse," Zora replied, sliding into a booth with the purse tucked safely beside her. Could always be worse. And in that moment, despite everything, Zora felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. A sense that maybe, just maybe, her luck was about to change. Morning came too quickly. Zora blinked awake to the clatter of plates and the smell of bacon. She dozed off in the corner booth of the diner, her head resting against the cool window, the designer purse tucked securely between her body and the wall. "Rough night?" Kelly asked, sliding a fresh cup of coffee across the table. The waitress had let her stay through her entire overnight shift, turning a blind eye when Zora nodded off around 3 in the morning. "Thanks for this," Zora said, gratefully wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "What time is it?" "Just past 6. My shift's ending soon." Kelly glanced at the purse. "Still planning to return that?" Zora nodded. "Heading there at 7. Kelly gave her a small smile. "You're something else, you know that? Not many people would do the right thing with that much cash involved." Zora sipped her coffee, saying nothing. She'd already explained her reasoning to Kelly in the wee hours of the morning. The waitress had listened, shaking her head with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "At least let me comp you some breakfast before you go," Kelly said. "You look like you could use it." 20 minutes later, with a full stomach and slightly more courage, Zora left the diner. The early morning air was crisp but less bitter than the night before. The sky was brightening with hints of pink and gold as she made her way toward Michigan Avenue. Winters Tower wasn't hard to find. It stood tall and proud, a gleaming structure of blue glass that reflected the morning sky. Zora had passed it many times but had never had reason to go inside. People like her didn't belong in places like that. As she approached the building, doubt crept in. Her clothes, the same jeans, sneakers, and jacket she'd worn for days, suddenly felt more shabby than usual. Her hair was a mess and she hadn't properly washed in 2 days. How would they receive her? Would security even let her through the door? Zora took a deep breath, adjusted her backpack, and clutched the expensive purse close to her chest. "One foot in front of the other," she whispered to herself. The lobby was all marble and polished metal, with a security desk front and center. 2 guards in pressed uniforms watched as she pushed through the revolving door. Their eyes immediately locked onto her, or more specifically onto the designer purse that so obviously didn't match the rest of her appearance. "Can I help you?" one of the guards asked, his tone making it clear that he doubted she had any legitimate business there. Zora straightened her spine. "I'm here to see Mrs. Eleanor Winters. I found her purse and I'm returning it. Her husband said she'd be expecting me." The guard exchanged a glance with his colleague. "Your name?" "Zora Thomas." He picked up a phone, speaking quietly into it while keeping his eyes on her. Zora stood still, fighting the urge to fidget under his gaze. After a moment, he hung up. "Wait there," he said, pointing to a seating area near the elevators. "Someone will come down for you." Zora nodded and moved to sit on one of the sleek leather couches. The lobby was beginning to fill with early workers, men and women in sharp suits carrying coffee cups and briefcases, their shoes clicking confidently across the marble floor. None of them looked like her. None of them looked at her either, except for a few curious glances at the expensive purse in her lap. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Zora's doubts grew stronger. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe they thought she had stolen the purse. Maybe they had called the police. Just as she was considering leaving, the elevator doors opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall and slender, dressed in a perfectly tailored pantsuit with short, natural hair styled with precision. She scanned the lobby until her eyes found Zora, then walked directly toward her. Zora stood up, nervously smoothing her jacket. "Zora Thomas?" the woman asked, her voice crisp and professional. "Yes, that's me. I'm Diane Powell, Mrs. Winters' executive assistant. I understand you have something that belongs to her?" Zora nodded, holding out the purse. "I found it last night at the downtown bus station. Everything's still inside. The wallet, phone, keys, everything." Diane took the purse, her expression shifting from professional detachment to surprise as she checked the contents. She looked back at Zora with new interest. "You didn't take anything? Not even—" She stopped herself. "Not even the cash," Zora finished for her. "It wasn't mine to take." Diane seemed to reassess her, taking in Zora's worn clothes and tired face. "Mrs. Winters will want to thank you personally. Please come up with me." Zora hesitated. "Is that necessary?" "I just wanted to make sure she got it back safely." She insisted. Diane said simply, gesturing toward the elevator. The elevator ride was silent and swift, carrying them up to the 47th floor. Zora's stomach lurched, partly from the rapid ascent and partly from nerves. What did a billionaire CEO want with her? The doors opened to reveal an elegant reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city and Lake Michigan beyond. Zora couldn't help but gasp softly. From this height, Chicago looked like a dream. "This way," Diane said, leading her past curious office workers to a large corner office. She knocked once on the heavy wooden door before opening it. "Mrs. Winters?" "Zora Thomas is here." Eleanor Winters was nothing like Zora expected. The magazines had shown a polished businesswoman with a stern expression and power suits. The person who stood to greet her was still elegantly dressed, but her face was warm, her smile genuine. "Miss Thomas," she said, coming around her massive desk. "I can't thank you enough for returning my purse. Please sit down." Zora perched on the edge of a plush chair, acutely aware of her appearance in such luxurious surroundings. "Would you like some coffee?" "Tea?" Eleanor offered. "No, thank you, ma'am. I just had some." Eleanor sat in the chair next to her rather than returning behind her desk. It felt less formal somehow, less intimidating. "My husband told me where you found my purse. I was at that station yesterday evening waiting for my driver." There was an emergency call and I must have set my bag down and forgotten it completely. She shook her head. Careless of me. It happens, Zora said quietly. Perhaps, but not usually with quite so much at stake. Eleanor's gaze was direct, curious. Diane tells me everything was returned. Every dollar, every card. Zora nodded, uncomfortable with where this was going. She hadn't returned the purse for praise or reward. May I ask why? Eleanor said, her voice gentle. The question caught Zora off guard. Why? Yes, why did you return it? Many wouldn't have. Zora thought for a moment. Because it was the right thing to do, she said finally. My grandmother always said integrity is what you do when nobody's watching. Eleanor nodded slowly. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She was, Zora said, a pang of loss washing through her. She raised me until I was 12. After she passed, I went into foster care. She hadn't meant to share that detail, but something about Eleanor's presence made it easy to talk. And now? Eleanor asked. Zora looked down at her hands. I aged out of the system 6 months ago. I've been between situations since then. It was a nicer way of saying homeless, a term she hated using to describe herself. It made people see only one thing about her, when she was so much more than her lack of housing. Understanding dawned in Eleanor's eyes. She didn't offer pity, which Zora appreciated. Instead, she seemed to be assessing her with new interest. What are your plans, Zora? For the future, I mean. Zora hadn't expected this conversation to turn personal. I'm trying to save enough for community college. I spend a lot of time at the public library, studying business and technology. I want to work in finance someday. Finance? Eleanor raised an eyebrow. That's my world. What interests you about it? How money can be a tool for change, Zora answered honestly. In the right hands, with the right knowledge, it can transform communities. My neighborhood growing up, we could have used that kind of investment. Eleanor's expression shifted, something sparking in her eyes. That's not the usual answer I hear. Most people talk about personal wealth or power. Zora shrugged. I've lived without money. I know its value. But I also know there are more important things. A moment of silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than awkward. Eleanor seemed to be making a decision. I'd like to give you a reward for returning my purse, she said finally. Zora began to shake her head. That's really not necessary. Eleanor held up a hand. Please allow me to do this. What would help you most right now, Zora? Be honest with me. The question hung in the air. Zora thought about lying, about downplaying her needs, but something told her that Eleanor would see through that. Stable housing, she admitted. A chance to get on my feet. The rest, school, career, I can work toward. But it's hard to focus on anything when you don't know where you'll sleep each night. Eleanor nodded, as if this confirmed something for her. I understand. More than you might think. She glanced at her watch. I have a meeting in 5 minutes that I can't miss. Would you be willing to come back tomorrow morning? Same time. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Zora blinked in surprise. Come back here? Yes, I promise it will be worth your time. Zora wasn't sure what to make of this, but she nodded. Okay, I'll come back tomorrow. Excellent. Eleanor stood and extended her hand. Thank you again, Zora, for your honesty and your integrity. Both are rarer than they should be. As Diane escorted her back to the lobby, Zora felt oddly lightheaded. The whole experience seemed surreal. The towering office, the view of the city, the conversation with one of Chicago's most powerful women. What could Eleanor Winters possibly want to discuss with her? Outside on the street, the day had fully begun. People rushed past, focused on their own lives and concerns. Zora stood still for a moment, looking up at the blue glass tower stretching toward the sky. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope Zora didn't sleep much that night. The youth shelter had an open bed, rare good fortune, but her mind was too busy racing with questions to rest properly. What did Eleanor Winters want to discuss? Was it just about a reward, or something else entirely? By morning, she had talked herself into and out of returning to Winters Tower at least a dozen times. It would be so easy to just not show up, to slip back into the invisible existence she'd been living. That felt safe, familiar. This, whatever this was, felt uncertain. In the end, curiosity won out. At 6:30, Zora stood in the shelter's cramped bathroom, doing her best to look presentable. She washed her face, brushed her teeth with the shelter's provided toothpaste, and tried to smooth her hair. Her clothes were still the same, she had nothing else, but at least they were a little cleaner after she'd hand-washed them in the sink the night before. Good enough, she muttered to her reflection. Though it wasn't, not really. Not for a place like Winter's Tower. The morning was brighter than the previous day, the February sun doing its best to warm the city. Zora walked the 15 blocks to Michigan Avenue, using the time to calm her nerves. Whatever happened, she reminded herself, she had survived worse. She would be okay. This time, when she entered the gleaming lobby, the security guard recognized her immediately. "Miss Thomas," he said with a nod. "All traces of yesterday's suspicion gone. Ms. Powell said to send you right up when you arrived." The elevator ride felt less intimidating the second time. When the doors opened on the 47th floor, Diane was waiting for her. "Good morning, Zora," she said warmly. "Mrs. Winters is expecting you. She's in the conference room this morning, not her office. Can I get you anything before we head in? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be nice," Zora admitted, her throat suddenly dry. Diane led her to a small kitchenette where she filled a glass with ice water and handed it to Zora. "Mrs. Winters was impressed with you yesterday," she said quietly. "That doesn't happen often." Before Zora could respond, Diane was moving again, leading her toward a different part of the floor. They stopped outside a frosted glass door. Diane knocked twice, then opened it. "Zora's here, Mrs. Winters." Eleanor sat at the head of a long conference table, papers spread out in front of her. She looked up and smiled. "Zora, thank you for coming back. Please come in." To Zora's surprise, Eleanor was not alone. A man in his mid-40s sat on one side of the table, a tablet in front of him. On the other side sat a woman with glasses and a kind face. "Let me introduce you," Eleanor said as Zora took a seat. "This is Anthony Chen, head of our HR department, and Patricia Lopez, who runs our Winters Foundation. I hope you don't mind that I've asked them to join us." Zora shook her head, though her nerves kicked up another notch. "What was going on?" "After you left yesterday," Eleanor continued, "I did some thinking about honesty, integrity, and opportunity, about how talent can be found in unexpected places." She leaned forward slightly. "I also thought about my own story, which has some parallels to yours." Zora blinked in surprise. Eleanor Winters, billionaire CEO, had parallels to her life? "I grew up in public housing on the South Side," Eleanor said, her voice matter-of-fact. "My mother worked 3 jobs. We struggled. I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to college, but it was hard. I worked nights, slept little, and still nearly dropped out twice." She paused, her eyes steady on Zora's face. "What changed my life was one person who saw potential in me. My economics professor took an interest, became a mentor, helped me get an internship at an investment firm. That first opportunity made all the difference." Zora nodded, understanding dawning. "Someone gave you a chance." "Exactly. And now I'd like to do the same for you." Eleanor looked to Anthony, who opened a folder and slid it across the table to Zora. "We'd like to offer you a position here at Winters Global," Eleanor said. "Entry-level administrative support to start. Full benefits, including health insurance, which would begin immediately." Zora stared at the paper in front of her, unable to process the words. "A job here? In this tower of glass and steel where she'd felt so out of place just yesterday? I don't understand," she finally managed. "Why me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Eleanor replied. "I know you found a purse with $5,000 cash and numerous credit cards, and you returned it without taking a penny. I know you're intelligent and articulate. I know you've been studying business and finance on your own, showing initiative and drive despite difficult circumstances." She smiled slightly. "And after running a multi-billion-dollar company for 15 years, I've gotten pretty good at reading people." Anthony cleared his throat. "The position would require you to have stable housing, of course, and eventually some additional clothes for the office environment. We're prepared to help with both." Patricia spoke up for the first time. "That's where I come in. The Winters Foundation has transitional housing available for exactly this kind of situation. A small apartment fully furnished in a building about 10 blocks from here. It would be yours, rent-free for the first 6 months while you get on your feet. After that, you'd pay a reduced rent based on your income." Zora's head was spinning. A job, an apartment. Just like that? It felt too good to be true. "What's the catch?" she asked bluntly. Eleanor laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "No catch. Well, except that you'd have to put up with working for me, which many find challenging. But Why would you do all this for a stranger? Eleanor's expression grew serious. Because someone did it for me once. Because talent and integrity deserve to be rewarded. And because I believe in investing in people who might not otherwise get a chance to show what they can do. She leaned back in her chair. Make no mistake, this is not charity. This is an investment. I expect you to work hard, to learn, to grow with this company. I'm offering you an opportunity, not a handout. Somehow that made Zora feel better. She didn't want charity. She wanted exactly what Eleanor was describing, a chance. What if it doesn't work out? She asked cautiously. What if I'm not what you're looking for? Then we part ways, no hard feelings, Eleanor said simply. The apartment would still be yours for the full 6 months, giving you time to find something else. Anthony handed her another paper. This is a basic outline of the job responsibilities, hours, and compensation. Take some time to read it over. Zora looked down at the salary figure and nearly gasped. It was more than double what she'd hoped to make at the entry-level jobs she'd been applying for. When would I start? She heard herself ask, her voice sounding far away. Monday, Eleanor replied. That gives you the weekend to get settled in the apartment. Patricia can take you there today if you'd like to see it. Zora's mind was racing. This morning she'd woken up in a shelter bunk, uncertain where she'd sleep tonight. Now she was being offered an apartment, a job, a future, all because she'd done the right thing with a found purse. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say yes, Eleanor suggested with a small smile, unless you have a better offer on the table. Zora let out a shaky laugh. No, definitely not. Then say yes. Zora took a deep breath. Yes, thank you, yes. The next few hours passed in a blur. Zora signed paperwork for both the job and the apartment. Patricia took her to see the small but clean one-bedroom unit, fully furnished right down to towels in the bathroom and dishes in the kitchen cabinets. There was even food in the refrigerator, just basics, but enough to get her through the next few days. The building has security and a laundry room in the basement, Patricia explained. All utilities are included. Here's your key. Zora took the small piece of metal, running her thumb over its ridges. A key, her key, to her apartment. The concept felt foreign after months of shelters and streets. There's one more thing, Patricia said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to Zora. Mrs. Winters asked me to give you this. For immediate expenses. Inside the envelope was $500 cash. This is too much, Zora protested. Patricia shook her head. It's an advance on your first paycheck. You'll need things before you start on Monday. Clothes, toiletries, maybe a cell phone. Mrs. Winters is practical about these things. After Patricia left, Zora stood alone in the middle of the apartment, her apartment, and tried to make sense of the past 24 hours. Yesterday morning she'd been homeless with less than $30 to her name. Now she had a job, an apartment, and a future that suddenly didn't look so bleak. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. From the 6th floor, she couldn't see as much as from Eleanor's office, but it was still a view she'd never had before, a view from a place of her own. Zora thought about her grandmother, wondering what she would say about all this. She'd probably quote one of her favorite sayings, "Do good, and good will come back to you." For the first time in a long time, Zora let herself cry, not from sadness or frustration, but from a complicated mix of relief, gratitude, and hope. She wasn't naive enough to think all her problems were solved. Monday would bring new challenges. Learning a new job, fitting into a world she'd only observed from the outside, proving that Eleanor's faith in her wasn't misplaced. But for now, for this moment, she allowed herself to simply feel the weight lifting from her shoulders. To breathe easier. To believe that maybe, just maybe, her life was changing for the better. Monday morning arrived with the buzz of an alarm clock, a sound Zora hadn't heard in months. She blinked, awakening her new bed, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling above her. Then it all came flooding back. The apartment, the job, the opportunity that had fallen into her lap like something from a dream. She'd spent the weekend preparing. Shopping for work clothes had been both exciting and overwhelming. With Patricia's advice, she'd found a few simple pieces at a department store sale. 2 pairs of black pants, 3 blouses, a cardigan, and a pair of sensible shoes. Nothing fancy, but professional enough to blend in at Winters Tower. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror now, dressed in her new clothes with her hair neatly styled, Zora hardly recognized herself. She looked normal, like someone who belonged in an office, like someone with a future. You can do this, she whispered to her reflection, one day at a time. The walk to work took exactly 18 minutes. Zora had timed it during a practice run on Sunday, not wanting to be late on her first day. The morning air was brisk, but the sky was clear. A good omen, she decided. This time when she entered the lobby, the security guards greeted her with respectful nods. One of them, the same one who had initially treated her with suspicion, even handed her an employee badge. "All set up in the system, Ms. Thomas," he said. "This will get you through security and up the elevators." The badge felt heavy in her hand. Zora Thomas, Administrative Assistant, Winters Global Investments. Seeing her name printed there, official and legitimate, brought a lump to her throat. Anthony from HR met her in the lobby, his smile friendly as he guided her toward the elevators. "Nervous?" he asked as they stepped inside. "Terrified," Zora admitted with a small laugh. "You'll be fine. Everyone's excited to meet you. It's not every day Mrs. Winters personally hires someone for the admin team. That didn't exactly help with the nerves. No pressure, right?" Anthony chuckled. "Don't worry. She wouldn't have chosen you if she didn't think you could handle it." They got off on the 32nd floor, which was a hive of activity. People hurried back and forth between cubicles and offices. Phones rang, keyboards clacked. It was nothing like the hushed elegance of the executive floor Zora had visited before. "This is the operations department," Anthony explained. "You'll be supporting two of our senior account managers. They handle some of our biggest client portfolios." He led her to a desk outside a pair of glass-walled offices. "This is your space. I'll let your supervisors know you're here." Before Zora could even set down her bag, a tall woman with a sleek ponytail emerged from one of the offices. "You must be Zora," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Ling Wu, one of the senior managers you'll be supporting." Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine. Zora liked her immediately. "And I'm David Washington," said a deep voice behind her. Zora turned to find a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and a bow tie. "We're thrilled to have you joining us." The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions, paperwork, and system logins. Ling and David walked her through her daily responsibilities, managing their calendars, answering phones, preparing documents for client meetings, and handling basic correspondence. "Don't worry about getting everything perfect right away," Ling assured her. "We know there's a learning curve." By lunchtime, Zora's head was spinning with new information. She sat in the company cafeteria, picking at a salad and trying not to feel overwhelmed when a familiar face appeared. "Mind if I join you?" Diane, Eleanor's assistant, asked, setting her tray down. "Please," Zora said, grateful for the friendly face. "How's the first day going?" "It's a lot to take in," Zora admitted. "But everyone's been really nice." Diane nodded. "Mrs. Winters has that effect. When she supports someone, others follow her lead." She took a bite of her sandwich. "She asked me to check on you, by the way. She has meetings all day but wanted to make sure you're settling in." The thought that Eleanor Winters, with her billion-dollar company and countless responsibilities, had taken time to think about her well-being made Zora feel both special and intimidated. "Please tell her I'm doing fine," she said. "And thank her again for everything." Diane smiled. "You can tell her yourself. She'd like to see you for coffee on Friday morning. Just a quick check-in." The rest of the week passed in a blur of new tasks, faces, and routines. Zora absorbed it all like a sponge, determined to prove herself worthy of the chance she'd been given. She arrived early each day, stayed late when needed, and asked thoughtful questions. By Thursday, she was beginning to feel more comfortable. She'd mastered the phone system, learned how to navigate the company's database, and even solved a minor crisis when David's presentation files disappeared before an important client meeting. They were saved in the wrong folder. "You're a natural," Ling told her after Zora had successfully coordinated a complex scheduling change involving multiple departments. "Some people take months to get the hang of this place." That night, Zora called Kelly at the diner to share her progress. The waitress had been one of the few consistent presences during her time on the streets, and Zora wanted her to know she was okay. "Girl, I knew you had it in you," Kelly said, her voice crackling through the speaker of Zora's new basic cell phone. "What did I tell you? Good things come to good people." "Sometimes," Zora agreed. "I still can't believe it. A week ago I was sleeping in the bus station, and now look at you. Corporate America." They both laughed, but Zora felt the weight of the change in her circumstances. She hadn't forgotten where she came from or how easily it could all disappear. Friday morning brought a flutter of nerves as she headed up to the 47th floor for her meeting with Eleanor. The CEO's calendar was notoriously packed. Diane had mentioned that some senior executives waited weeks for a 15-minute slot. The fact that Eleanor had made time for her after just 1 week felt significant. This time, they met in a small, comfortable sitting area adjacent to Eleanor's office. Coffee was already waiting along with a plate of pastries. "Zora," Eleanor greeted her warmly. "Please sit. How was your first week with us?" "Challenging," Zora replied honestly. "But good. I'm learning a lot. Ling and David speak highly of you. They say you're catching on quickly." Zora felt a flush of pride. "I'm trying. I don't want to let them down. Or you." Eleanor's expression softened. "This isn't about me. This opportunity is about you and what you do with it." She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me honestly, how are you adjusting? Not just to the job, but to everything." The question caught Zora off guard. She wasn't used to people asking about her well-being, not in a way that invited real honesty. "It's an adjustment," she admitted. "Having a place to live, a routine, people counting on me to show up. It's good, but sometimes it feels like I'm going to wake up and be back on the street." Eleanor nodded. "I understand that feeling. For years after I made it, I kept a packed bag under my bed, just in case." "Really? Really? It takes time for security to feel real when you've lived without it." Zora took a sip of her coffee, considering this. "The hardest part is sometimes feeling like I don't belong here. Like everyone can tell I was homeless a week ago." "You don't think I felt that way?" Eleanor asked, raising an eyebrow. "The first time I walked into a boardroom full of white men in expensive suits? The first time I had to argue for my ideas against people who'd been handed everything I had to fight for?" She set down her cup. "That feeling of being an outsider, it doesn't go away completely. But over time, it becomes less of a burden and more of a strength. Your perspective is different from most people here, and that's valuable." "I hadn't thought about it that way," Zora said. "I'd like to propose something," Eleanor continued. "A mentorship of sorts. We could meet like this, maybe twice a month. You can ask questions, share concerns, get advice. I can help you navigate both the company and your career path." Zora stared at her, stunned. "You want to mentor me? Why?" "Because I see potential in you. Because I remember what it's like to need guidance. And because, frankly, diversity of thought and experience makes this company stronger." It was a generous offer, one that many at Winters Global would envy. An hour of the CEO's time twice a month was worth more than Zora could calculate. "I'd be honored," she said simply. Eleanor smiled. "Good. Now tell me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your goal?" It was a standard interview question, one Zora had practiced answers for in the past. But sitting here with Eleanor Winters, those practiced answers felt hollow. "Honestly," she said, "a week ago my 5-year plan was to hopefully have an apartment and maybe be halfway through community college. Now," she paused, gathering her courage. "Now I want more. I want to learn everything I can about this business. I want to understand how finance can help communities like the one I grew up in. And someday I want to be in a position to give someone else the same chance you gave me." Eleanor nodded, her eyes bright with approval. "That," she said, "is a goal worth working toward. And I think you'll get there a lot sooner than 5 years." As Zora rode the elevator back down to her floor, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. A sense of possibility. Not just for tomorrow or next week, but for years to come. Her life had changed because she'd done the right thing with a found purse. But it would continue to change because of what she did with this opportunity. The future, for the first time in a long time, was hers to shape. 3 years could change everything. Zora knew this better than most as she stood at the window of her new apartment, watching the Chicago skyline glitter against the evening sky. This view, 15 floors higher than her first apartment, was just one of many changes that marked how far she'd come. She turned back to the half-unpacked boxes scattered across her living room. Moving was a hassle, but this place was worth it. A 1-bedroom in a nice building, with a doorman and a rooftop garden. She'd signed the lease last week, proud that she could afford it entirely on her own now. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Don't forget, foundation meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring your presentation, proud of you." Zora smiled as she texted back a quick confirmation. 3 years of mentorship had evolved into genuine friendship, Though she still couldn't quite bring herself to call the billionaire by her first name in person, the Winters Foundation had become a significant part of Zora's life. 6 months into her job at Winters Global, Eleanor had invited her to join the foundation's youth committee. Now Zora was preparing to present her proposal for a new initiative, one that was deeply personal to her. She pulled out her laptop and reviewed her presentation one more time. The bridging program, she'd named it. A comprehensive support system for young adults aging out of foster care, offering housing, education, job training, and mentorship. Just like the opportunity she'd received, but formalized and expanded to help dozens of young people each year. Eleanor had loved the concept from the first mention. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need," she'd said. Tomorrow, Zora would present it to the full foundation board for approval and funding. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Ling. "Hey boss," Zora answered with a smile. "Just checking that you're ready for tomorrow," Ling said. "The board can be intimidating, but you've got this." Ling was no longer just Zora's supervisor. After 18 months as an administrative assistant, Zora had been promoted to junior account manager on Ling's team. The promotion had come with a raise, new responsibilities, and confirmation that Eleanor's faith in her had been well placed. "I think I'm ready," Zora replied. "I've been practicing the presentation all weekend." "They're going to love it," Ling assured her. "It's a brilliant program, and nobody could present it better than you." After they hung up, Zora went back to unpacking. She pulled a framed photo from one box, a picture of herself with Kelly from the diner, taken at Kelly's wedding last summer. Zora had helped her friend secure a small business loan to buy the diner from its retiring owner. Now Kelly was both a new bride and a new business owner, her life transformed in its own way. Zora placed the photo on her mantle alongside other snapshots from the past 3 years. Her college graduation, she'd completed her associate's degree in business at night while working. Her first day at her own desk after the promotion, and a group photo from the youth shelter, where she now volunteered twice a month. The last box she unpacked contained something special, a simple wooden frame holding her grandmother's handwritten recipe for sweet potato pie. It was one of the few possessions she'd managed to keep through foster care and homelessness. Now, it would hang in her kitchen, a reminder of where she came from and the values that had guided her here. "Look at me now, Grandma," she whispered, running a finger along the faded handwriting. "I think you'd be proud." Morning came with perfect September weather, clear skies, and a gentle breeze. Zora dressed with care in a tailored navy suit, one of several professional outfits she now owned. Her confidence had grown with her wardrobe. Gone was the nervous young woman who'd felt so out of place in Winters Tower. The foundation boardroom was already half full when she arrived. Eleanor waved her over to an empty seat beside her. "Ready?" the CEO asked quietly. "As I'll ever be," Zora replied. She recognized most of the people around the table, wealthy donors, community leaders, and a few celebrities who supported the foundation's work. 3 years ago, she would have been intimidated. Today, she felt like she belonged. When it was her turn to present, Zora stood tall, her voice clear and confident as she outlined her vision for the bridging program. "The gap between foster care and independent adulthood is where too many young people fall," she explained. "I know because I was one of them, but I was lucky. I found support at a critical moment." She glanced at Eleanor. "Not everyone gets that lucky break. This program would create a system where luck isn't needed, where support is built in." She walked the board through the details. Housing, partnerships with local landlords, educational scholarships, job placement services, and most importantly, one-on-one mentoring from successful professionals. "The cost per participant is significant," she acknowledged, addressing the bottom line directly. "But the return on investment is even more significant. When these young people succeed, when they become taxpayers, homeowners, community leaders, we all benefit. This isn't charity, it's community investment." When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Eleanor began to applaud, and others joined in. The questions that followed were thoughtful, focused on implementation rather than approval. By the end of the meeting, the board had unanimously approved both the program and its funding. Congratulations, Eleanor said, embracing her as the meeting broke up. This is just the beginning. That afternoon, Zora visited one of the youth shelters where she volunteered. The director, Thomas, greeted her with excitement. I heard the news. The board approved your program? Zora nodded, unable to contain her smile. We'll start with 10 participants in the pilot year. I was hoping we could identify some candidates here. Thomas's face lit up. I have at least 5 young people who would be perfect. When can we start the application process? Next month. I want everything in place before we bring anyone in. As they walked through the shelter, Zora noticed a young woman sitting alone in the corner, reading a book on finance. Something about her focused determination seemed familiar. Who's that? She asked Thomas quietly. That's Tiana. She aged out of foster care 2 months ago. Smart as a whip, she's been teaching herself investing using donated books. But she's struggling to find work without experience or connections. Zora watched the young woman for a moment longer. Would you introduce us? The conversation that followed felt like looking into a mirror of her past. Tiana was bright, determined, and deeply frustrated by the barriers she faced. She had dreams of working in finance, but no clear path to get there. Have you ever thought about an entry-level position at an investment firm? Zora asked. I might know of an opportunity. Tiana's eyes widened. Are you serious? I've applied to dozens of places, but no one calls back. I'm serious, Zora said. It would start administrative, but with room to grow. And there's a new housing program that might help too. She handed Tiana her business card. Call me on Monday. We'll set up a proper interview. The look of cautious hope on Tiana's face was one Zora recognized well. It was the same expression she must have worn 3 years ago in Eleanor's office. That evening, Zora met Eleanor for dinner at a small restaurant they both loved. Over plates of pasta, they discussed the day's success and the future of the bridging program. I met someone at the shelter today, Zora said. She reminds me of myself 3 years ago. I'm thinking of recommending her for an entry position in the operations department. Eleanor smiled. The circle continues. Is that how you see it? A circle? I do, Eleanor said, twirling pasta around her fork. My professor helped me. I helped you. Now you're helping Tiana. And someday she'll help someone else. That's how real change happens. One person at a time, but connected in a continuous circle of opportunity. Zora considered this. When I returned your purse, I never imagined where it would lead. Sometimes the smallest actions reveal the most about a person's character, Eleanor said. You could have taken what wasn't yours. Money that you desperately needed. But you didn't. That told me everything I needed to know about who you are. Later, walking home under a sky full of stars, Zora thought about circles and connections, about how one moment had changed everything. She thought about Tiana and the other young people who would soon join the bridging program. She thought about her grandmother's wisdom and Eleanor's mentorship. 3 years ago, she'd been homeless, hopeless, sleeping in bus stations and diners. Now she had a career, an apartment, an education, and most importantly, a purpose bigger than herself. She had become not just a recipient of opportunity, but a creator of it. Tomorrow she would call Tiana and set the wheel turning again. Another life would change. Another circle would begin. As the Chicago skyline glittered before her, Zora felt a deep sense of gratitude mixed with determination. This was just the beginning of what she could accomplish. Just the first of many lives she could help transform, just as hers had been transformed by a simple act of honesty and the unexpected opportunities that followed. The journey from homeless girl to rising executive had been remarkable. But the journey ahead, helping others make their own remarkable journeys, promised to be even more fulfilling.